Hello, and welcome back to Towers Take Live on Facebook, brought to you by Dog Nation. Hope everybody's doing well today on a beautiful February afternoon. Hard to believe, as cold as it was this morning, that baseball season is upon us. The Georgia baseball team takes to the field tomorrow. Actually, they're going to be dodging rain a little bit. It's beautiful as it is today. You might not realize that, but some more rain is on the way. We haven't had enough of that, have we? Excuse me. But the Diamond Dogs return to the Diamond tomorrow. They moved their game up from 5 o'clock to 3 o'clock in order to try to beat the rain. It's supposed to come later tomorrow, and then right now they're scheduled to play the second and third games of the series against the Dayton Flyers on Saturday and Sunday. I think at 2 and 1. But it sounds like there might be more rain coming in on Saturday. Or overnight Saturday into Sunday, so they may try to squeeze that in on a doubleheader. That hasn't been announced just yet. This is always as an interactive medium, so let me know what's on your mind. Obviously baseball is on my mind. I'll have a season preview up shortly at Dog Nation. I know recruiting is always on your minds, and I'm sure you probably are tuned in and waiting to see what the next thing is to drop. Jeff Sentell will, I'm sure, have some news up later today, and I'm going to try to get your comments dialed up here. Having some issues with my iPad that I normally watch. Okay, here's everybody. Looks like Kimberly McGee, Charles Winslet were a couple of the first to tune in. John Anthony said 1, but I'm sorry, John, you weren't first. I am sorry, y'all. I am still trying to get over a cold, and when you start talking, it tends to come up. And I hadn't been coughing all morning until I got here. Hey, Rick Wallace, Edwina Atwood, John Anthony. Todd Johnson leads us off with a comment. No one complains about the portal unless they gain a player. Or I guess no one complains. Everybody complains unless you get a player, right? I weighed in on the transfer portal, and I thought about Jacob Eason a lot lately as all this transfer portal business has gone on. As it turns out, skinny QB didn't have the opportunity to take advantage of the transfer portal is all it is. It was just timing on his part. That's probably not the worst thing in the world, considering what his situation was there at the University of Washington with a established quarterback and Jake Browning already being there. But what if Browning had gotten hurt? That was too bad. In my understanding on it, from reaching out to some folks out there in Washington, excuse me, I was able to find out, sorry, that they did explore. The Easons did look into the possibility of applying for some sort of waiver. It would have been against conventional wisdom, and they were actually told at the time to basically not to bother. Then a year later, it's like people are transferring like colds from one person to the other, right? From one program to the other. Hello, Phil Rogers coming from Jacksonville. Mark Cochran says the portal is good when it's used right. I don't think kids should just transfer because they aren't getting playing time. That's the problem with it. How many stories do all you guys know? I know hundreds of them of, the guy who patiently waited his chance and finally got to play. I mean, Hudson Mason, DJ Shockley come to mind, Joe Cox to a lesser degree, right? Um, but even Aaron Murray had to wait his time. Phil Rogers, there is no news about Zeus. Sorry about that. There's not going to be any news on Zeus, guys. I weighed in on this a while back, and the fact of the matter is, just you can't be expected to. You should not expect much from Zamir White. He's not going to practice in spring practice. There's no way. I mean, he'll. Let me take that. I take that back. He will practice. He'll run through plays and that kind of stuff, but he won't do any in 11 on 11. And in my opinion, if you're playing football, you're not practicing unless you're going through contact and running plays where people are trying to tackle you. Um, he's not going to be able to do that. Clarkston, Washington. Hello, Russ Moody. Is that anywhere near Seattle and those Huskies? Let us know where you are, everybody. Russ Moody is in Clarkston, Washington. I'm familiar with Clarkston, Georgia. Ricardo Williams, I hear he's 240 right now. You talking about Zeus? Based on what I've seen from Zeus, he doesn't need to be 240. He needs to be maybe 220 or 225. He's not as big as people think in real life. Good Lord. I apologize. I mean, what are you going to do, right? Nothing like tuning in live and watching somebody cough. Hey, Ken Shackelford, good to see you here. Phil Rogers, you're on the wrong show if you want to know what backs you're after. Jeff Sentell will tell you about that. I do not have time. I don't care to keep up with recruiting this time of year. I follow it when they're signing and when they're showing up here. But I am not following what's happening in the class of 2020 just yet. I know that Jeff Sentell is, and he'll have all kinds of news on that later. Georgia's after Georgia's after the best backs in the United States of America all the time, every year. So just go to 24/7 Sports Composite, look for the top 5 backs in America, and that's who Georgia's after. I appreciate it, Phil. I appreciate it. Hello, Kendall Sneed. St. Simon's checking in. Dustin Dampier. Is it Dampier or Dampier? Just like it's spelled. Dampier, I believe, is French. Auburn, Georgia. Ron Warbington coming in from just down the road there. So anyway, so the big news this week, I guess, Ant-Man, right? Anthony Ant-Man Edwards. I covered that all through the weekend and into Monday. Went down to Holy Spirit Prep for the big announcement. That was a huge deal of historical significance, in my opinion. And there's a lot of different opinions on AAU and Atlanta AAU, but here's my take on it, right? If Kentucky and North Carolina and Kansas and Duke are coming into your city and swooping up and taking these players, take them off to their place and playing for championships with them, you can't allow that to happen. So I don't care what your personal views are of AAU or Atlanta AAU or whatever's going on in there. I think you got to get in there and battle with him. And I loved what Tom Crean said a little while back. He said, he's not just trying to make Georgia better. He's trying to compete for championships. And if you're competing for championships, those are the guys you're competing with, and you better have, you better have some of those guys in your roster. So to me, it's not only about Anthony Edwards, who, based on the 2020 draft projections, is going to be the number 1 pick of the 2020 draft. So, nobody's going to turn their head to that kind of money if it doesn't, turn out to be the case. So you're only going to have them a year. So the important thing is to get other players. My understanding is there's at least 2 more recruits that Georgia's after that Anthony Edwards will have a lot to do with them being here if they do in fact show up. And that's kind of the way basketball works. I mean, I think it's pretty well documented that one player can't turn around your program. I mean, we've seen that at LSU and other places in recent years. Um, but if you get a few of these guys to show up in one place, it can make a real difference, and that's what Tom Crean is trying to do. Now, there's a lot of other stuff that's been going on with Crean in the program. Um, that a lot of people have a lot of different feelings about. I didn't personally think what he said last Saturday after the game was quite as egregious as some others did. He shouldn't have said what he said. And when you write it out, those 150 words, without the 500 that preceded him and the other 200 that came after, they sound pretty bad. But they are what they are. He said what he said, and obviously Tom Crean apologized profusely for it, as well he should. But I think he was just telling the truth. I mean, I watched that game; those guys were terrible. And the thing about basketball, in particular on this level, is you have to play smart all the time, and you have to play hard all the time. And when I say hard, I've been I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Financial Peace University and what Dave Ramsey teaches, but I love the one thing um, they talk about in that when it talks about trying to pay off your debt. This is not an endorsement for Dave Ramsey or anything, but they're talking about you got to do it with gazelle intensity. And here's where they're coming from on that is so a cheetah who prefers gazelle to all other food types is faster and actually more nimble than a gazelle. But apparently, a gazelle gets away 85 or 90% of the time. Why is that? Well, it's because the gazelle is running for its life. The cheetah is running for its dinner. So he gives up, after a few good moves and goes back and rests in the shade until he gets another shot. Right? That's what I believe is missing with Georgia in different spots during the game. They don't play with gazelle intensity. You got to really get after it. I get aggravated watching teams like that when they're just sort of, playing for the ball to come to them as opposed to going to the ball, getting themselves to the ball. They're turn around and expecting a rebound, but not putting themselves in position to get the rebound over somebody else, blocking out with passion, and that's what I think is missing. And yes, Donald Wilson says Larry Bird made a huge difference at Indiana State, and all you got to do is sign yourself a Larry Bird, right? Um, and he actually had some good players around him at Indiana State. If you go back and look at that, but Donald Wilson with a question. These always give me. Will Nate McBride fit into play this year? Wow. Nate McBride at this point, I think it's clear his primary contributions are going to be on special teams, and maybe he'll get a few repetitions on defense. But it looks to me that he's a little further down the line. And here comes Brandon Vernon with a great comment. Is Nate McBride in the portal? Which is like a better question. I don't think Nate McBride is going to go anywhere. And I am not scoffing at Nate McBride or his abilities. I think he's a good kid and a hardworking player. But not everybody can compete on this level. I mean, he thought he could. Georgia thought he could, and maybe he can still. He just hasn't been able to this point as a sophomore, rising junior. So his career's not over. We'll see. Kevin Bailey's in the house. Mark Schreiner's in the house. Gene Tootle, former Bulldog. Good to see you, Gene. Glad that you're in here as well. Yeah, Mike Anderson, what's the infatuation with McBride? I don't know. Ever since he signed, everybody keeps expecting. Well, I'll tell you what it was. McBride from Vidalia, I think he was. Um, ran some unbelievable times in track. Um, he's just not all that big, really, for an inside linebacker. And Georgia's really trying to get some stuff down there. Ricky, no, I have not seen the kid from Lithonia High School. Let me know who he is and why I should see him. I assume you're talking about a basketball player. Let me know who he is, Ricky, and we'll get a look at that. Um, Other questions? Is anybody interested in the baseball team? Um, the baseball team gets started tomorrow. Their preseason number 9, or kind of 9 to is their high. I think 15, maybe their low. There's about 6 different college baseball polls that you can refer to, and I'll do that in just a minute, Randy Adams. I will discuss the punting game, which I don't get asked to discuss very often. I can do that in just a minute. But on baseball, again, let me know if you're interested in hearing about it, because I think it's interesting. I think Georgia will be pretty good in baseball. They obviously lose a lot of power in Keegan McGovern and the DH guy, and Adam Sasser, of course. 41 home runs, a bunch of RBI. They lost just from those 3 guys, but they're going to have a fantastic pitching rotation, great defense, and Scott Strickland believes they'll be able to get get that balance back out there. Phil Rogers, who is replacing Sasser at first base, yeah, it's a guy who played last year a good bit. What did I do with my notes on that? He is it Patrick played last year. Anyway, he was a defensive replacement for Sasser last year. Played a lot of ball, came in late innings, defensive replacement. Hopefully he'll be able to hit a little bit. And that's it. Okay, D Red says Tanks Bigsby is probably the best run back in the country for 2020. Well, I bet you anything Georgia's in on him. Don't know anything about him, but so about the punting game, yeah, obviously Jake Camarda is going to be back. I think Jake Camarda is a really good punter. I think he's just young and just needs to learn how to control that howitzer of a leg he has. That was his biggest problem, is just touchbacks last year. Touchbacks, you want them on kickoffs, you don't want them on punts. And he had too many of them last year, 6, 7, 8, way more than they had the previous year. So, you want to get that dialed in. I think they're going to be great. I think he's quite the weapon. You just got to get more consistent when it comes to swapping field position, and then way more consistent when it comes to be able to put the ball inside the 20-yard line. So that's that. The Georgia basketball team, by the way, has LSU coming in on Saturday. LSU just knocked off number 5 Kentucky at Rupp. But Georgia gave them a good game in Baton Rouge. They're very similar teams from the standpoint of a lot of sort of free movement, offensively, free shooting. Georgia will be fine if they can make their shots. I mean, this just in. But Tyree Crump, I think, was 2 for 23 or whatever he was, shooting from 3-point range. I mean, that's just, and a lot of those were early in the shot clock. I appreciate Crump's shooting abilities and his confidence in his own shot, but what he did in their last game at Texas A&M was harmful to the rest of the team. You can't keep putting those up. If it's not your day, it's not your day. You need to fake a few and try to drive to the hole. And he's a defensive liability as well. So I appreciate Tyree Crump a lot, but he's just got to recognize when he's on and when he's off. And the good news for Georgia basketball coming out of that Texas A&M game was Claxton. Nick Claxton got back on track a little bit and played a little bit better. And got the rebound. Georgia as a team got a little bit better on the rebound, and Beatty had a tough game, and obviously Georgia's guard play has been substandard. I think Jordan Harris is coming on a little bit, um, healthy now, recovered from that concussion, and he's quietly been getting double figures every game, driving to the hole, getting him more confidence. You got to work on that outside shot and distributing the ball a little bit better, but he can get to the rack and he can make free throws. So he's going to help you some. And then, I think Nick Claxton and Derek O'Beatty should give you an advantage in the paint most every game. Football wise, did anybody else read about the what I wrote about Jacob Eason and the transfer portal? That's going to be interesting to watch Jacob Eason out at Washington this year. I mean, I'm still eager to see the kid play. When he, lest we forget, Jacob Eason won 2 quarterback competitions. He won as a true freshman, earning the job over Grayson Lambert, and then his second year he had won that job over Jake Fromm, and then gets injured in the first game, and so we still don't really know how good Jacob Eason can be, and he's favored to take over as the quarterback for the Washington Huskies. He has competition there again, and 4 other quarterbacks will compete with him for playing time out in Washington. And with any luck, we'll all get that Final Four. We hope, with Justin Fields from Ohio State, Jake Fromm from Georgia, and Trevor Lawrence from Georgia, and Jacob Eason, all 4 of them in there playing with each other. That'd be awesome, wouldn't it? David Hill says here he's rooting for Eason, handled his transfer with class, and he did. He didn't come out and badmouth anybody, and he could have. There's kind of an unspoken rule that you can't lose your starting job due to injury, but he did, and I don't think anybody begrudges Georgia for that. They got the national championship, and he didn't complain. So he would. By the way, interesting to find out, Eason was, and some of you younger guys might have known this. Certainly, those who follow Eason on Instagram, he was in Athens back in December. Came back to hang out with his buddies Isaac Nauta and others on the occasion of them getting ready to leave Georgia, and hung out in Athens for a little while. So that was pretty cool. He did not, as I understand it, get to go to the Rose Bowl with the Huskies. He wasn't able to travel as a redshirt. I don't know if that's 100% sure, but I don't think he was able to go for the team, which would have been pretty cool if could have gone 2 years in a row to the Rose Bowl. Curtis Reese says Crean has done what Kirby did, which is lock down the state. Well, I don't know that Kirby is locked down the state. He's going out of state increasingly more, but he is getting most of the best players that he wanted, and that's what Tom Crean's trying to do. When you get in there and beat Kentucky in anything, that's a big deal. So thank you, Curtis Reese. We've only got a few more minutes here. Get me your questions as quick as you can. Let's see. D. Reed, what you got on your mind? Talking recruiting, Zach and Kendall will be in the top 3. But look for Bigsby. He's doing some big stuff. Tony Garcia, you're just tuning in, buddy. you're a little bit late. We're glad you're here, though. We're going to knock off here in a few minutes. Y'all let me know what you want to know. Elijah Pitts, hey, Chip, where's SEC Media Day held this year? Loved it being in Atlanta last year. I agree with you, Elijah. I loved it being in Atlanta as well. I mean, not only are we located close to Atlanta, but I just think Atlanta is a good natural place for it. And I understand it will come back to Atlanta eventually, but we're back in Birmingham this summer, so we'll be at the good old Winfrey once again. Yeah, I agree. Curtis Reese says, talking special teams, UGA should be very good on special teams. I think they will be too. Obviously it starts with Rodrigo Blankenship, and that's going to be just to start with. That's going to be a lot of touchbacks. I'm sure He's expecting a big year, and I hope he gets more opportunities on field goals. I think Georgia got him a little bit out of his rhythm with all those fakes and stuff they did last year. So I think that hurt Georgia ultimately. Mike Anderson says Crean is a good coach. He just needs to be good players. I think Crean's track record speaks for itself. He got Indiana to #1, and they won several Big Ten championships. Now that fan base was disappointed because they couldn't get past the Sweet 16, but that's kind of a different atmosphere up there in Indiana when it comes to basketball and expectation. I do believe he knows what he's doing, but it's just going to take time to get players, and then we'll see. Here's the thing about Crean and the Georgia Bulldogs. He could be trying to play differently, a different style, and probably get Georgia more wins. But he's trying to, to hone a certain style, to show a certain style. For recruits to see and for Georgia players to learn the way that he wants to play, and that doesn't exactly fit with what he has on the roster. And you could argue that you need to play the way your roster can succeed, but in year one, that's not what Crean's trying to do. He's trying to build something here at Georgia, and there's different opinions on that, and I understand both sides of it, but I also understand what he's trying to do. That's about all the time we have. I'll see you looking here for one or two more questions. We got a great debate going with Mike Anderson and Philip Jordan Wells on the running back recruitment. Y'all let me know what you think about that. For Dog Nation, I want to thank everybody for hanging out for a few minutes. We do this every Thursday for a half hour. We'll do longer. As we get, we always go a little bit longer when we're in the middle of football season, that kind of stuff. I'll have a season preview up on the baseball team a little bit later this afternoon. Jeff Sentell has some recruiting news coming your way, as always. Mike Griffith is off this week, but he will be back this weekend, and he will provide you coverage of the LSU game Saturday. Georgia plays LSU, which just knocked off Kentucky this weekend. Oh, and before I forget, congratulations to the women's tennis team on winning the national indoors this weekend. That was a great sign for Jeff Wallace's team. Number 5, Georgia knocks off number 3, North Carolina, I think it was. And there was already some buzz that this could be a year that the women's tennis team is back in the national championship hunt. Georgia's got a few national champion contenders heading into the spring sports and out of the winter months. So let's keep an eye on that. And as always, football's always right there. Kirby Smart, by the way, speaking tomorrow at Robins Air Force Base to troops getting ready to go to be deployed. So hopefully we'll be able to bring you. I have a conflict, so we're still trying to work that out. But hopefully we'll be able to bring you some news of that. I'm sure we will in some way, shape, or form eventually be able to share with you what Kirby had to say to the troops down there. But otherwise, that's it for me. I apologize for the coughing at the early part. I'm still coming off a fairly significant cold thing that we had here. But as always, I'm here in Athens on the front lines covering the Dogs for you. And we'll talk about it again next Thursday here. You can read our stories daily on Dog Nation. Hear from Brandon Adams daily on Dog Nation Daily. Thanks for hanging out with me for a few minutes, and I will see you this time next week. So long, y'all.